Welcome to Clip's Smile. Kate Davis took one last look at the building of the county jail, surrounded by guard towers, and quickly walked towards the bus stop. It's hard to even imagine what Kate had to go through before she was finally free. Of course, during this entire time, the young woman submitted complaints and appeals for acquittal to numerous authorities, but the court decision remained in force. The woman knew that on the day of her release, there would be no one to pick her up, and so she tried not to keep her hopes up. Suddenly, somebody called her by name out of a Ford parked by the side of the road. The woman stopped and tried to make out the driver's face, squinting from the bright sunshine. Then, a wide grin appeared on Kate's face, and sparks flashed in her eyes. She recognized the woman at the Ford's wheel. "Hi, Amanda! If only you knew how glad I am to see you! I have so much to tell you!" exclaimed the former inmate and welled up. "Kidding, girlfriend! We'll talk about everything on our drive back," replied Amanda and opened the passenger door. On their way, Amanda told her friend the latest news, intentionally avoiding the awkward subject of her imprisonment. 3 years ago, Amanda and Kate worked as nurses in the surgical ward of a private clinic. As they were both recent graduates and of about the same age, the two quickly became friends. Unfortunately, Kate didn't get along with the department chief, who used the clinic as a front for his medication fraud. Seeing the new nurse as a threat, the sneaky doctor decided to get rid of her in a crafty way, blaming her for the theft of prescription meds. On that same day, Kate was falsely accused, arrested, and taken into custody. Surprisingly, the investigation was streamlined, and not 1 month after her arrest, the young nurse was sentenced to 3 years and sent off to prison. This was a hard blow for the poor young woman, and recovering from it proved to be very difficult. This caused Kate's mother to pass away 2 years into Kate's sentence, not getting the chance to see her daughter get released. Unfortunately, the former inmate never knew her father. Kate remembered well the time when she used to live together with her mother in a small house on the outskirts of Boston. Back then, life didn't seem so unfair, and her mother's help was invaluable. And now, having done her 3-year sentence, Kate was coming home again. The young woman knew well that it was unlikely she would be able to get a job as a nurse again, and so she had accepted the fact that she would need to pick another less prestigious profession. "What do you think you'll do next, buddy? I'll lend you some money to get by in the meantime. It's not much, but it's better than nothing." Amanda broke the tense silence. "I don't know yet, to be honest. I thought about getting a job as a janitor or a dishwasher at a restaurant," replied Kate, clearing her throat in shame. Amanda smiled ironically in response. "Oh, come on, a janitor? You're a medical professional, my friend. Don't forget that. I have a job for you, but I'm not sure if you'll take it." Kate was ready to throw her arms around Amanda, who had taken it upon herself to think of her friend and find a job in advance. "Of course, I'll take it. I don't have much of a choice. I'm ready to start a new life, and I need money to make that happen," added the former inmate. But when Kate found out what the job was, she suddenly started to doubt her abilities. The thing was that Amanda offered her to work as a caretaker for a wealthy businessman's paralyzed son. The young man was in a car accident 6 months ago and needed a caretaker with a medical degree. "But I've never worked as a caretaker. This isn't exactly my specialty," said Kate, unsure. But Amanda was so inspired by the idea of getting her friend a job that she simply ignored her objections. Instead, she drove Kate home and left her the paralyzed man's father's phone number. It was only now that the former inmate could smell the coveted air of freedom. "It's a shame that my mother can't see me now," whispered Kate with tears in her eyes, and tried not to look at the family portrait hanging on the wall. The woman spent the remainder of the day cleaning the house and cooking a simple dinner. The next morning, Kate decided to start looking for a job. Unfortunately, the reality turned out to be a lot harsher than she thought. Upon learning that Kate had a criminal record, most of the employers immediately refused to give her a job, saying that the position has already been filled. After a few days of fruitless searching, the young woman realized that she didn't really have a choice and needed to take the job as a caretaker for the millionaire's paralyzed son. Kate called the number that Amanda had left her and arranged a meeting with the man's father, Rupert Johnson. He turned out to be a pleasant man of about 50 with eyes filled with sadness. As it became evident from their conversation, his son Ethan got into a car accident half a year ago. Despite the fact that the doctor's prognosis for his son's recovery was quite optimistic, the young man plunged into a deep depression nonetheless. He could stay in his room for days on end, sitting in his wheelchair and staring out the window. "I must warn you, Kate. You see, my son, how do I put it? Well, Ethan has a very difficult personality. We went through about 6 caretakers in the past 3 months," said Mr. Johnson, struggling to find the right words. To the businessman's great surprise, Kate wasn't put off by what he said. Moreover, she immediately agreed to the work conditions, which included living in the patient's house and free meals. "Now all that's left is for me to meet Ethan and get to work," thought Kate after finishing all the paperwork. But the first meeting with her patient didn't go all that great. Upon seeing his new caretaker, Ethan threw a plastic juice bottle at her, which doused the young woman in juice. "Well, that's one way to meet your new caretaker," thought the woman, trying to clean off her clothes with a towel and a napkin. Meanwhile, Ethan rolled his wheelchair up to the window as if nothing had happened and started watching the cars driving by. The young man could have bet any money that the new caretaker would last a day, but Kate exceeded all his expectations. Of course, the man had no idea what Kate had to go through in the past, and so he treated her like the ordinary help. Rupert Johnson felt an immense feeling of embarrassment and guilt for his obnoxious son's behavior. Meanwhile, Kate carefully studied Ethan's medical history and found out a lot of peculiar things in it. "Why aren't you doing physical therapy as the doctor prescribed?" asked the young woman in a tone that didn't lend itself to any objections. Ethan looked at his new caretaker with surprise and shook his head. "What's the point of those exercises if I'm going to be left disabled for the rest of my life? All of this has already caused my fiancée to leave me, and all my friends turned away from me," said Ethan indifferently. Now Kate understood the real reason for the young man's sadness. "Don't worry, I'll get you out of that depression," thought Kate, and started putting together a physical therapy program. Initially, Ethan flat out refused to do anything at all, but after a long conversation with Kate, he decided to give it a shot. At first, there were regular strolls around the house in his wheelchair, then simple exercises for strengthening his back and arm muscles. Later came swimming lessons and medical massage. Ethan and Kate had to go through a lot before seeing even some minimal results. One day, the millionaire's son woke up in the morning and realized that he could wiggle his big toe on his right foot. "Kate, come here quick! There's hope, look! I'm no longer paralyzed, I can move my big toe!" shouted Ethan in amazement, waking up and frightening the entire house. "Well, it's too early to call it a full recovery, but you're making definite progress," said Kate, smiling. Deep inside, the young woman was very pleased that her efforts weren't pointless and more results. Now, having achieved at least some success, Kate doubled her efforts with Ethan's physical therapy. No less than 7 months had passed before the millionaire's son was able to get up on his feet by himself, leaning against his cane, wobbling from side to side. Ethan took a few steps across the room, which made his father incredibly happy. "You're a true magician, Kate! How did you manage to do that? We tried an infinite number of methods, but not one of them worked for my son," asked Rupert Johnson in awe. Kate only smiled mysteriously in response and looked Ethan straight in the eyes. The thing was that a mutual attraction had sparked between the two and filled their hearts with care and tenderness. United by the common goal, Kate and Ethan fell in love with each other without even realizing it. The main reason for Ethan's success with learning how to walk again was the fact that more than anything in the world, he wanted to propose to the beloved woman standing up on both feet like an ordinary man. Now this was finally possible. Clutching the precious velvet box in his hand, Ethan walked over to Kate and said what he'd been wanting to say for a few months now. "Will you be my wife, Kate?" said Ethan, embarrassed at the sound of his own voice. The nervous young man read the response in his beloved's eyes even before she said it out loud. "I will, my dear," whispered Kate and gave the young man a tender kiss. 3 months later, the young couple held the wedding to which they invited literally half the city. Rupert Johnson watched the newlyweds and couldn't hold back his tears. Now the millionaire knew that Ethan was about to build his life with the person who would never betray him, and who would surround him with love and care.